There's something uniquely unsettling about danger lurking within luxury. When we pay premium prices for first-class service, we expect not just comfort and elegance, but absolute safety. The very exclusivity of luxury transport, the careful screening, the elite clientele, the meticulous attention to detail, creates an illusion of perfect security that can make us blind to threats hiding in plain sight. During my investigations into unexplained phenomena, I've discovered that some of the most compelling premonition cases occur in these rarefied environments where everything appears flawless. Perhaps it's the stark contrast between the polished exterior and hidden danger that amplifies our subconscious warning systems. Perhaps the very act of trying to create perfect experiences makes us more sensitive to the imperfections that could destroy them. Today I share two accounts from individuals who experienced premonitions aboard the most exclusive forms of transportation money can buy. Both found themselves receiving warnings about threats that had nothing to do with mechanical failure or natural disaster, but with human malice hiding behind a facade of sophistication. The first comes from Antoine Dubois, head chef aboard the Orient Express Renaissance, Europe's most luxurious train service, where a single journey costs more than most people's monthly salary. The second, from Rebecca Martinez, a passenger on the Celestial Voyager, the world's first commercial luxury airship to operate regular service between New York and London. These testimonies were recorded separately in quiet restaurants and hotel lounges far from the exclusive world they describe. Both individuals still work in high-end hospitality, but both carry the memory of moments when their intuition detected evil hiding beneath impeccable service and flawless presentation. What makes their stories particularly disturbing is how their premonitions manifested not as warnings about accidents or natural disasters, but about deliberate human malice. As if the very attempt to create perfect luxury environments had attracted those who would use that perfection to mask terrible intentions. Listen to these accounts and ask yourself, in a world where we increasingly trust systems and protocols to protect us, are we losing our ability to detect the human dangers that no security screening can prevent? When everything looks perfect, how do we recognize the imperfections that could kill us? Story 1. The chef's warning account of Antoine Dubois, 38 years old, executive chef. My name is Antoine Dubois, and I was head chef aboard the Orient Express Renaissance, the most luxurious passenger train in the world. For 3 years, I served 7-course meals to Europe's elite as they traveled from London to Istanbul in carriages that cost more to book than most people earn in a year. I thought I understood every aspect of creating the perfect dining experience. I was wrong about what perfect could hide. The Renaissance wasn't just a train, it was a rolling palace. Each of the 12 carriages had been restored to exceed the original Orient Express's legendary standards. Crystal chandeliers, hand-carved woodwork, silk wallpapers, and a kitchen that could rival any Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris. Our passenger list read like a who's who of international business, politics, and entertainment. But luxury attracts more than just wealth. It attracts people who believe they're above consequences. The incident occurred during our September journey from London to Venice, a 3-day journey through some of Europe's most beautiful countryside. We had 28 passengers aboard, including several high-profile politicians, a famous conductor, and 3 billionaire industrialists, the kind of people who expected perfect service and had the power to destroy careers if they didn't. Receive it. I ran my kitchen with the precision of a Swiss watch. Every ingredient was sourced from the finest suppliers. Every dish was prepared according to recipes I'd perfected over 15 years of haute cuisine. My sous chef, Maria, and I maintained standards that would have impressed the most demanding food critics in the world. But on the second evening of the journey, something felt wrong with the dinner service. I was putting the finishing touches on the main course, duck, confit with black truffle sauce, when I caught a scent that didn't belong. It was subtle, almost imperceptible beneath the rich aromas of the kitchen, but it made my stomach clench with inexplicable dread. The smell was metallic, slightly bitter, like old pennies mixed with something organic that had gone bad. But when I checked every ingredient, every sauce, every garnish, everything was perfect. The duck was flawless. The truffles were pristine. The vegetables were crisp and fresh. Yet that smell lingered, and with it came a growing certainty that something terrible was about to happen. I was plating the final dishes when the feeling intensified. As I arranged the duck and vegetables on the bone china plates, I found myself hesitating over one particular serving. It looked identical to all the others. Same portion size, same artistic presentation, same perfect garnish. But my hands started shaking as I held the plate. That's when I noticed the passenger manifest for table 7. The meal was being served to Viktor Kozlov, a Russian oligarch who'd made his fortune in rare earth mining. Kozlov was traveling with his wife and teenage daughter, occupying the most expensive suite aboard the train. But as I looked at his name on the service list, that metallic smell became overwhelming. I set the plate down and stepped back, my heart racing for no reason I could identify. "Chef?" Maria appeared at my side. "Is everything all right?" "The duck for, table 7, I said quietly. "Something's wrong with it." She looked at the plate I'd just prepared. "It looks perfect, same as all the others." But it wasn't the same. I couldn't explain how I knew, but that particular serving was different, dangerous. "I need you to prepare a new plate for Mr. Kozlov," I told her. "Chef, that duck is identical to the others. It came from the same preparation, the same sauce, the same... Prepare a new plate, now!" Maria stared at me with the expression kitchen staff get when they think their chef has lost his mind. In 3 years aboard the Renaissance, I'd never questioned my own food preparation. I'd never doubted my ingredients or second-guessed my techniques. But as I looked at that plate, destined for Viktor Kozlov, I could see something that wasn't visible. Death, served on fine china with a black truffle garnish. I spent the next 20 minutes preparing a completely new serving for table 7, using fresh duck from Mao, a different portion of the preparation, new sauce from a separate batch, even different plates and silverware. Everything had to be started from scratch. The dinner service was delayed by 30 minutes, an eternity in high-end hospitality. The passengers were politely inquiring about their meals, and the maître d' was growing increasingly anxious about maintaining our reputation for flawless timing. But I couldn't serve that original plate. Every instinct I'd developed over 15 years of professional cooking was screaming that it would kill Viktor Kozlov. The meal was finally served at 9:45 p.m. Kozlov and his family received their dinner along with profuse apologies for the delay. The other passengers graciously accepted our explanation of minor preparation adjustments and proceeded to enjoy what several later described as one of the finest meals of their lives. Everything should have ended there. A successful dinner service, satisfied passengers, and one head chef who'd overreacted to a phantom concern that probably stemmed from too much stress and too little sleep. But at 11:20 p.m., as I was cleaning the kitchen for the night, the train's security officer knocked on my door. "Chef Dubois, we need to speak with you about the dinner service." Officer Reynolds was a former Scotland Yard detective who'd been hired to provide discreet security for the Renaissance's high-profile passengers. He was the kind of man who noticed things others missed. "Is there a problem with the meal?" I asked. "Not with the meal you served, but we intercepted something intended for Mr. Kozlov's plate." He showed me a small vial containing traces of white powder. Ricin. Enough to kill a man Viktor Kozlov's size within 48 hours. Someone added it to his food during preparation. The blood drained from my face. "That's impossible. I control every ingredient, every step of preparation. Nobody could have. Someone did. The question is, how you knew to prepare a replacement meal." I stared at the vial, my mind reeling. The metallic smell, the inexplicable dread, the certainty that something was wrong with that specific plate. It hadn't been paranoia. It had been accurate. "I smelled something," I said weakly. "Something that didn't belong." "Ricin is odorless, chef, and according to our investigation, it was added after you'd completed the initial preparation." "Then how did I know?" Reynolds studied my face for a long moment. "That's what we're trying to understand." The investigation revealed that the poison had been introduced by someone with access to the kitchen during the brief window between plating and service. The suspect was Jean-Claude Moreau, one of my own sous chefs, a man I'd worked with for 18 months without a single incident. Moreau had been recruited by a business rival of Kozlov's who wanted to eliminate him without creating an international incident. A death aboard the Orient Express would have appeared to be natural causes, a heart attack brought on by rich food and travel stress. The ricin would have been undetectable without specific testing that wouldn't have been performed on a man of Kozlov's age and lifestyle. It was a perfect plan, executed with professional precision. It failed only because I'd somehow detected a poison that has no scent, added by someone I trusted, to food I'd prepared myself. Jean-Claude was arrested quietly at our next stop in Paris. The incident was handled with the discretion that luxury travel demands. No media coverage, no passenger panic, no damage to the Renaissance's reputation. Kozlov and his family completed their journey without ever knowing how close they'd come to death. But I knew, and the knowledge changed everything. Since that night, I've never been able to approach food preparation with the same confidence. I find myself scrutinizing every ingredient, questioning every step of preparation, looking for signs of tampering that my rational mind knows aren't there. But I've also learned to trust those inexplicable moments when something feels wrong. 3 times since the Kozlov incident, I've discarded food that looked perfect but felt dangerous. I couldn't explain why, and I never found evidence of actual problems, but I threw it away anyway. My staff thinks I've become paranoid. Maybe I have, but paranoia is a small price to pay for the knowledge that human malice can hide anywhere, even in the most carefully controlled environments. The Orient Express Renaissance continues to operate, serving the world's elite with the same impeccable standards. But we've implemented new security protocols, background checks for all staff, restricted kitchen access, and random food testing. The passengers never know about these measures. Luxury, after all, is about the illusion of effortless perfection. But those of us who work behind the scenes understand the truth. No system is perfect, no environment is completely safe, and sometimes the only thing standing between a guest and disaster is a chef who trusts his nose more than his training. Victor Kozlov sent me a bottle of 1947 Chateau Margaux after the investigation concluded. The card simply read, "Thank you for saving my life." He never knew exactly how close he'd come to dying, but he understood that my paranoia had prevented something terrible. I still have that bottle. I'm saving it for the day I retire, when I can finally stop worrying about every ingredient, every preparation, every dish that leaves my kitchen. But sometimes I wonder if that day will ever come. Once you've learned that death can hide in plain sight, disguised as perfect food, served on perfect china to perfect passengers, can you ever really relax again? Have you ever known something was wrong with a situation that appeared completely normal? Have you ever trusted an inexplicable feeling that saved someone from danger they never knew existed? Antoine's story reveals how malice can hide within the most carefully controlled environments, detectable only by senses we don't fully understand. But what happens when that same intuitive warning system detects danger not from human intent, but from mechanical failure in technology we're told is foolproof? What happens when luxury travel's newest innovation carries risks that no amount of money can eliminate? Story 2. The Passenger's Nightmare. Account of Rebecca Martinez, 42 years old, venture capitalist. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I was one of the first passengers aboard the Celestial Voyager, the world's only commercial luxury airship operating regular transatlantic service. For $50,000 per person, you could travel from New York to London in a floating palace that promised to revive the golden age of air travel with modern safety and unprecedented luxury. I should have been thrilled to be part of aviation history. Instead, I spent 6 days having nightmares that nearly drove me to cancel the most expensive vacation of my life. The Celestial Voyager was a marvel of modern engineering, a 900-foot airship filled with helium instead of the hydrogen that doomed the Hindenburg nearly a century ago. The passenger gondola featured 12 luxury suites, a formal dining room, an observation lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows, and amenities that rivaled the finest hotels in the world. This wasn't some carnival ride or tourist gimmick. The Voyager represented a $2 billion investment in revolutionary transportation technology. The passenger list included tech billionaires, Hollywood celebrities, and European royalty. The safety systems incorporated every lesson learned from decades of aviation disasters. But 6 days before departure, I started having the dreams. They always began the same way. I'm standing in the observation lounge, watching the Atlantic Ocean pass below us like a blue carpet dotted with toy ships. The afternoon sun is streaming through the windows, and I'm holding a glass of champagne, feeling like I'm living in a science fiction movie. Then something changes in the quality of the light. It becomes darker, more orange, and I can smell smoke. Not the clean scent of a fireplace, but something acrid and chemical, like burning plastic mixed with gasoline. I turn around to look for the source of the smoke, and that's when I see it. Flames spreading across the ceiling of the observation lounge. Not normal orange flames, but blue-white fire that moves like liquid, consuming everything it touches in seconds. In the dream, I run toward the exit, but the corridors are filling with smoke, and other passengers are screaming. The airship is tilting at an impossible angle, and I can feel us falling toward the ocean far below. I always wake up just before impact, gasping and covered in sweat, with the smell of smoke still burning in my nostrils. The first few nights, I dismissed the dreams as pre-flight anxiety. I'd never been on an airship before, and despite all the safety assurances, there was something inherently unsettling about traveling in a giant balloon filled with gas. My subconscious was probably just processing those fears, but the dreams were too specific, too detailed, too consistent. Every night, the same sequence. Champagne in the observation lounge, the changing light, the blue-white flames, the tilt of the airship, the fall toward the ocean. By the fourth night, I was seriously considering canceling the trip. I called my assistant on Friday morning, 2 days before departure. "Sarah, I need you to look into the refund policy for the Celestial Voyager booking." "Is everything okay, Rebecca? You've been looking forward to this trip for months." I had been. The Celestial Voyager represented everything I loved about cutting-edge technology and exclusive experiences. As a venture capitalist specializing in transportation innovations, I was genuinely excited to be part of this historic moment. I'm having second thoughts about the safety. Rebecca, you've read all the safety reports. Helium is completely non-flammable. The airship has triple redundant systems for everything. The passenger survival rate for modern airships is literally 100%. She was right, of course. I'd done my due diligence before booking. The Celestial Voyager incorporated every safety innovation developed since the Hindenburg disaster. The helium gas couldn't burn. The gondola was designed to detach from the envelope in an emergency. The entire structure had been tested beyond any conceivable failure scenario. But I kept having the dreams. The night before departure, the nightmare was more vivid than ever. This time I noticed details I'd missed before. The exact location where the fire started, near the port side. Observation windows, the specific sound it made, like tearing silk, and the way it spread, following the aluminum support struts that connected the gondola to the main envelope. I woke up at 3 a.m. with perfect recall of every detail. I could draw a diagram of exactly how the fire would develop and spread. I could describe the sequence of events that would lead to the airship's destruction. It was impossible. I wasn't an engineer or a safety expert. I had no technical knowledge of airship construction or fire dynamics. Yet I knew exactly how the Celestial Voyager would die. I spent the rest of the night researching airship fires, emergency procedures, and historical accidents. What I found didn't comfort me. While helium itself couldn't burn, airships contained thousands of other flammable materials. Fabric, plastics, lubricants, electrical components. A fire might not be able to ignite the lifting gas, but it could certainly destroy the structure that contained. More disturbing, I discovered that modern airship safety systems were largely theoretical. The Celestial Voyager was the first passenger airship to operate commercially in over 80 years. Its safety protocols were based on computer models and engineering projections, not real-world experience. I was about to become a test passenger for technology that had never been proven under actual emergency conditions. At 8 a.m., I called the Celestial Voyager booking office. "I need to speak with your chief safety officer about fire suppression systems." The representative was polite, but puzzled. "Ma'am, all safety information is available in your pre-flight briefing materials. Is there a specific concern?" "I want to know about fire protection in the observation lounge. Specifically, what happens if there's an electrical fire near the portside windows? I can connect you with our safety department, but I assure you that all electrical systems have been tested. Extensively. The probability of fire is extremely low. But what if it happens anyway? 20 minutes later, I was speaking with Dr. James Patterson, the Voyager's head of safety operations. He was patient and thorough, walking me through every fire suppression system, every emergency protocol, every backup system designed to protect passengers. Ms. Martinez, I understand your concerns, but I can assure you that fire aboard the Celestial Voyager is virtually impossible. Our electrical systems are completely isolated from flammable materials. Our fire suppression systems are state-of-the-art, and our emergency procedures have been tested in every conceivable scenario. What about an electrical failure that creates sparks near the aluminum structural connections? There was a pause. That's a very specific scenario. May I ask what prompted that concern? I couldn't tell him about the dreams. I couldn't explain that I'd seen the exact sequence of events that would destroy his airship. Instead, I fell back on my professional background. I'm a venture capitalist specializing in transportation technology. I tend to think about failure modes that might not be obvious to engineers focused on normal operations. Well, aluminum doesn't burn, and our electrical systems have multiple layers of protection. But if you're concerned about that specific area, I could arrange for you to inspect the observation lounge before departure. That afternoon, I toured the Celestial Voyager with Dr. Patterson and the chief engineer. The observation lounge was exactly as I'd seen it in my dreams. Floor-to-ceiling windows, aluminum support struts, luxury seating arranged around small tables perfect for champagne service. But when I looked at the port side wall, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a junction box mounted on the aluminum strut, exactly where I'd seen the fire start in my nightmare. According to the chief engineer, it controlled the window heating system, a safety feature designed to prevent ice formation at high altitude. What happens if that junction box overheats? I asked. It's protected by multiple circuit breakers and thermal cutoffs. Overheating is essentially impossible. But what if it happens anyway? The engineer consulted his tablet. Well, the box is mounted directly on the aluminum structural member. If it did overheat, the aluminum would conduct heat throughout the support framework. But the junction box itself is surrounded by flame-retardant materials. What kind of flame-retardant materials? Standard aviation-grade plastics and insulation. I felt sick. In my dream, those flame-retardant materials had burned like gasoline, spreading fire along the aluminum struts directly into the airship's main structure. That evening, I made the hardest decision of my professional life. I canceled my trip aboard the Celestial Voyager, forfeiting the $50,000 I'd paid for the privilege of making history. My friends thought I'd lost my mind. My business partners questioned my judgment. The media, when they found out that a prominent tech investor had canceled her historic flight, speculated about hidden safety concerns with the Airship program. But I couldn't board that aircraft. My dreams had been too vivid, too specific, too consistently focused on one particular failure mode that nobody else seemed to consider possible. The Celestial Voyager departed New York on schedule with 23 passengers and 12 crew members. For the first 18 hours, everything proceeded perfectly. The passengers posted photos on social media showing champagne service in the observation lounge, gourmet meals in the dining room, and spectacular views of the Atlantic Ocean. Then, at 2:47 p.m. on the second day, something went wrong with the window heating system in the observation lounge. The junction box I'd asked about overheated due to a cascading electrical failure that overwhelmed its thermal protection systems. The superheated aluminum conducted that heat throughout the support framework, igniting the flame-retardant materials that weren't designed to handle such extreme temperatures. The fire spread exactly as I'd seen in my dreams. Blue-white flames that moved like liquid along the aluminum struts, consuming the ceiling and walls of the observation lounge in less than 3 minutes. But this is where my nightmares proved incomplete. The crew's response was faster and more effective than my dreams had suggested. The fire suppression systems, while not preventing the initial blaze, contained it before it could spread to the main envelope. The emergency procedures worked exactly as designed. The observation lounge was sealed off, and the fire was extinguished within 6 minutes. Most importantly, the airship didn't fall from the sky. The Celestial Voyager made an emergency landing at a Military airfield in Newfoundland with all passengers and crew alive and uninjured. The observation lounge was destroyed, exactly as I dreamed, but the rest of the airship remained intact. The investigation revealed that my concerns about the junction box had been prophetic. The electrical failure occurred precisely as I described to Dr. Patterson, following a sequence of events that their safety modeling hadn't considered possible. But the safety systems I'd been assured about worked. Not perfectly. The fire still happened, but well enough to prevent catastrophe. When Dr. Patterson called to tell me about the incident, his voice was shaken but respectful. "Ms. Martinez, I don't know how you knew that junction box would fail, but your questions probably saved lives. After our conversation, I ordered additional thermal monitoring for that system. Without those sensors, we wouldn't have detected the overheating in time to implement emergency procedures. I had been right about the fire, but I'd been wrong about the outcome. The Celestial Voyager was repaired and returned to service 6 months later with enhanced fire protection systems and improved emergency procedures. The observation lounge was completely redesigned with better electrical isolation and more effective suppression systems. I finally took my trip on the airship a year later. The experience was everything I'd hoped it would be: magical, luxurious, and completely safe. Even had champagne in the new observation lounge, watching the Atlantic pass below without a trace of anxiety. But I learned something important from those nightmares. Sometimes our premonitions aren't meant to predict exact outcomes, but to help us recognize and prepare for dangers that others might miss. My dreams showed me the fire that actually happened. They just didn't show me the human ingenuity and preparation that would prevent that fire from becoming a disaster. Have you ever had recurring dreams about disaster that turned out to contain elements of truth? Have you ever trusted a premonition enough to change your plans, only to discover that your caution helped prevent the very thing you'd feared? Two professionals in the world of luxury transport, both confronted with premonitions that challenged their faith in carefully engineered safety systems. Antoine Dubois trusted his inexplicable detection of odorless poison and saved a passenger's life through instincts that defied rational explanation. Rebecca Martinez followed recurring nightmares about airship disaster and through her questions and caution helped prevent her visions from becoming reality. What strikes me most about these accounts is how both individuals had to choose between trusting expensive, meticulously designed systems and believing in warnings that made no logical sense. Antoine's nose detected ricin that sophisticated security screening had missed. Rebecca's dreams revealed a failure mode that million-dollar safety modeling hadn't considered. Both cases demonstrate something crucial about premonitions in luxury environments. They often detect not mechanical failures or natural disasters, but human factors that perfect systems can't account for. The threat to Viktor Kozlov came from deliberate malice hiding within a trusted team. The danger to the Celestial Voyager emerged from an interaction between safety systems that had never been tested in combination. During my follow-up interviews, I discovered that both individuals experienced lasting changes in how they approach their professional environments. Antoine described developing an almost supernatural sensitivity to wrongness in his kitchen, detecting problems through senses he can't name. Rebecca mentioned that she now reads technical specifications with an intuitive awareness of potential failure modes that her engineering training never taught her. Perhaps this is what premonitions really represent. Not supernatural predictions of fixed futures, but enhanced pattern recognition that allows us to detect dangers hidden within apparent safety. But there's a more unsettling aspect to both stories. In each case, the premonition wasn't just about personal danger, but about threats to exclusive communities of wealth and power. Antoine's warning protected a Russian oligarch. Rebecca's caution safeguarded tech billionaires and celebrities. This raises disturbing questions about who receives these warnings and why. Are premonitions truly random, or do they somehow target threats to those with the most influence? Do our unconscious minds detect not just danger, but politically significant danger? 6 months after these interviews, I researched other cases of premonitions in luxury environments. I found accounts of private jet pilots who refused to fly based on inexplicable concerns, later vindicated by mechanical failures. yacht captains who changed course based on dreams about storms that weather services hadn't predicted, hotel managers who detected security threats through nothing more than intuitive unease. In every case, the premonitions seemed calibrated not just to prevent disaster, but to prevent disaster for people whose deaths would have far-reaching consequences. This suggests that premonitions in luxury environments may serve a function beyond individual survival. They may be early warning, systems for threats to social and economic stability, ways of protecting not just lives, but the networks of power and influence that those lives represent. The most significant discovery in my research was how both individuals' premonitions led to systemic improvements in safety. Antoine's detection of the ricin plot resulted in enhanced security protocols for luxury rail travel. Rebecca's questions about the junction box led to design improvements that prevented future airship fires. In both cases, trusting seemingly irrational warnings produced rational safety improvements that protected future passengers. This suggests that premonitions may not be about avoiding predetermined fates, but about identifying weaknesses in systems that appear perfect. By forcing us to question what we've been told is safe, they drive innovations that make those systems actually safer. Perhaps the real purpose of premonitions isn't to predict disasters, but to prevent them. Not by changing the future, but by changing our understanding of present dangers we've been trained to ignore. But the most haunting aspect of both stories is how close each came to tragedy, despite the warnings. Antoine discovered the poison plot by accident, hours after the fact. Rebecca's airship caught fire exactly as she'd dreamed, saved only by safety measures her questions had inspired. This raises the ultimate question about premonitions in luxury environments. Are we receiving these warnings because we're meant to act on them, or are we receiving them because we're running out of time to act on them? Have you ever felt that something was wrong in a situation everyone else trusted completely? Have you ever questioned safety systems that appeared perfect, only to discover that your concerns were more valid than anyone wanted to admit?